My name is Estelle Kingsman, and I'm 30 years old. By the time my mother shoved me off a hospital bed while I was in active labor, everyone liked to pretend they were shocked. But I wasn't, because that moment, the snap of her hand on my shoulder, the hard edge of metal under my hip, the scream of a nurse, wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment no one could ignore anymore. Before we get there, please like, share, and subscribe if you want to hear more real stories like this. Stories people call dramatic, until a police report proves otherwise. If you'd looked at my life 6 months before that shove, you would have thought I was just another first-time mom with a slightly overbearing mother. My boyfriend, Connor, and I had been together for 3 years. We were saving for a small wedding someday, but life and bills and timing kept getting in the way. A baby wasn't part of the immediate plan. Until it was. When I saw those 2 pink lines, I cried in the bathroom of our tiny apartment, terrified and thrilled at the same time. Connor found me sitting on the floor, clutching the test. "Tell me that's what I think it is," he whispered. "We're having a baby," I said, and for a moment, everything was perfect. We decided to tell our families at our favorite steakhouse, the same place where Connor had once almost proposed before the bill made him rethink his timing. We joked that we'd go back when life made more sense. Instead, we went back with something bigger than a ring. We reserved the big round table. Connor's parents, Helen and Richard, arrived first, warm and chatty, and already speculating about dessert. My dad trailed behind my mother like a shadow, shoulders slightly hunched the way they always were when Diane was in a mood. Brandon, my younger brother, slid into the seat next to me and bumped my shoulder. "You're weirdly quiet," he muttered. "You're not about to announce you're moving to Mars, are you?" "Close," I said, unable to stop the smile tugging at my mouth. My mother, Diane, didn't look at me. She had the menu held up like a shield, reading every line as if the wrong entree might personally offend her. When the waitress left with our drink orders, I cleared my throat and reached for Connor's hand under the table. His fingers curled around mine, steady. "We have some exciting news," I said. Diane didn't even lower her menu. "If you're switching jobs again, Estelle, I swear—" "Mom, just listen," I said, heartbeat in my ears. Connor squeezed my hand. "We're having a baby," he announced. His face lit up with a pride so pure it hurt to look at. My father's fork slipped from his fingers and clattered against his plate. Helen gasped and immediately started talking about tiny sweaters and baby blankets. Richard stood up halfway, reaching over to shake Connor's hand. "My God, sweetheart," Helen said, coming around the table to hug me. "You're going to be a mom." For a few seconds, it felt like a real celebration. Then my mother set her menu down. Not gently, not with joy. She placed it on the table with the kind of precision surgeons use when they're about to cut. "Who is your obstetrician?" she asked. The question snapped the air in half. I tried to keep my voice neutral. "We're going with Dr. Amanda Brooks at Lakeside General. She comes highly recommended, and she's in my insurance network." "Absolutely not," my mother said. Her tone could have frozen fire. "You'll use Dr. Nathaniel Garrison at Whitmore Private Hospital. He delivered you. He delivered your brother Brandon. He is the only competent OB/GYN in this entire state." "Mom," I said carefully, "Dr. Brooks is perfectly qualified. We did our research. I like her. And she takes our insurance," Connor added, still trying to sound respectful. "We're really comfortable with our decision." "Insurance?" My mother laughed, but it was a cold, hollow sound that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Estelle, this is your first child. You don't penny pinch on medical care. I'll pay for Dr. Garrison myself if money is the issue." Connor shifted in his seat beside me. "Diane, we appreciate the offer," he said, "but we've already chosen our doctor. We're very happy with our decision." My mother turned to him slowly, like a snake finally focusing on its prey. "Connor," she said, each syllable sharp, "when you've carried and delivered a child, then you can have an opinion. Until then, this is between my daughter and me." My stomach dropped. Heat rushed into my face. "Mom," I snapped, "Connor is my boyfriend and the baby's father. Of course he has a say." Something ugly flashed across her features. She tossed her napkin onto the table, the white fabric landing like a small flag of war. "When you come to your senses and want what's best for your baby instead of being stubborn, you know where to find me." And just like that, she stood up and walked out of the restaurant. The silence she left behind felt heavier than any shouting could have. Over the next few weeks, the real campaign began. She called constantly, sometimes 5, 6 times a day. If I didn't pick up, she'd leave voicemails, her voice tight with rehearsed concern. "Estelle, did you read the article I sent you about fetal brain damage from incompetent doctors?" I heard about a woman whose baby died because the hospital didn't have the right equipment. Do you really want to gamble your child's life on convenience? She texted Connor links to malpractice lawsuits at 2 in the morning. She emailed Helen with helpful information, trying to recruit her to the cause. Helen, bless her, pulled me aside one morning over coffee and said, "Your mother called me a nosy busybody. I've been called worse, but the audacity of her calling anyone else nosy is something." Brandon tried to play peacemaker. We met at a greasy diner near his apartment, my pregnancy cravings demanding hash browns and pickles. "Lou, you know how Mom is," he said, still habitually using my childhood nickname. "Maybe just meet with Dr. Garrison once. Get her off your back." "I'm not switching doctors to appease her control issues," I said. "This isn't about what's best for the baby. This is about her needing to be in charge." Brandon stirred his sweet tea, eyes darting to the window. "It's more than control issues," he said finally. "She's been acting weirder than usual." "How?" I asked. "She keeps going to Dr. Garrison's office, he said, even though she's not sick. I saw her there 3 times last month when I was visiting Dad at the physical therapy clinic. She wasn't going to see him. She went straight to Garrison's private office and stayed for hours." A cold, crawling feeling moved up my spine. "Maybe she's sick and not telling us," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I didn't believe them. Brandon shook his head. "I asked the receptionist. Mom's not on their patient list. She just goes there." That should have been my first real warning. Instead, I told myself my mother was just being dramatic in a new way, that she was bored, lonely, looking for a project. That lie kept me sane for a few more weeks. Then came my baby shower. Helen insisted on hosting it at her house, a pretty brick place with white trim and a backyard that smelled like cut grass and safety. There were pink and gray elephant decorations, little sandwiches, cupcakes with tiny fondant rattles. Connor's family and my friends laughed and played games while I sat on the couch, one hand on my belly, trying to memorize the sound of simple joy. For the first hour, my mother didn't show. I started to hope she wouldn't come at all. Then the doorbell rang. Helen opened it, and I heard my mother's voice float in ahead of her perfume. "Everyone," Diane announced as she swept into the living room. "This is Dr. Garrison. I thought he should meet Estelle before the delivery." Conversation died. All eyes swung to the man following her. He was in his 60s, tall, with carefully styled silver hair and an expensive suit that didn't quite match the suburban living room. On paper, he looked like the kind of doctor hospitals put on billboards. But the moment his eyes landed on me, something inside me recoiled. He walked over and took my hand in both of his. His grip was too firm, his hold too long. "Diane has told me so much about you," he said. "You look just like her at that age." My skin crawled. "Mom, this is inappropriate," I said, pulling my hand back. "Please ask him to leave." "Don't be rude, Estelle," she snapped. "Dr. Garrison drove an hour to meet you." Connor stood up slowly, placing himself between me and the doctor. "Diane," he said, voice tight. "We've made our decision. This is harassment at this point." Dr. Garrison chuckled, like he found all of this adorably naive. "Young man, I've been caring for this family since before you were born. I think I know what's best for them." "You don't know anything about my girlfriend or our baby," Connor said. "Please leave." My mother's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "How dare you speak to him that way? Do you have any idea who he is? What he's done for this family?" "Whatever weird relationship you have with this doctor," I said, pushing myself carefully to my feet. "Keep it away from me and my child." For a second, something flickered in Dr. Garrison's eyes. Annoyance, maybe even threat. Then he turned to my mother. "Diane," he murmured, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." They left together, my mother pausing in the doorway just long enough to throw one last grenade over her shoulder. "When something goes wrong," she said, "don't come crying to me." The door shut behind them. The room exhaled. I told myself she was being dramatic, manipulative, controlling, the same old pattern. But late that night, when the house was quiet and Connor's hand rested warm on my belly as we lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling and replayed every word, every look. Something was wrong. Not just my mother is overbearing wrong. Deeper, older, rot that had been spreading under our family's floorboards for years. A week later, I picked up the phone and called the state medical board, pretending to be just another patient checking credentials. That was the moment everything began to crack. The woman on the phone sounded bored, like she'd made this speech 1,000 times. "Yes, Dr. Nathaniel Garrison is currently licensed to practice," she said. "There were prior disciplinary actions on record, but his license is active." "Prior disciplinary actions?" I repeated, my heart dropping into my stomach. "What kind?" "I can't give you specifics over the phone," she replied, "but suspensions are public record. You can request copies through our website. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Connor found me at the kitchen table surrounded by my laptop, a legal pad, and the remains of a granola bar I'd half eaten and then forgotten. Hey, he said gently, you okay? I think my mother's miracle doctor might be a predator, I said. That got his attention. An hour later, I was buried in online archives and scanned PDFs. It took longer than it should have. State websites apparently hadn't heard of user-friendly. But the pieces started to fall into place. Twice in the last 20 years, Dr. Garrison's license had been suspended, both times for boundary violations and inappropriate relationships with patients. Both times, the suspensions had mysteriously ended early. Both times, a large donation had been made to the Ethics Committee just before his reinstatement. The donor was listed as anonymous, but the amounts, they rang a bell. I remembered sitting at my parents' kitchen table years ago, helping Dad sort through bank statements for their taxes. There had been 2 large withdrawals from their joint savings that my father waved off as medical expenses for your mother. Seeing those same numbers on my laptop screen made something inside me go cold. Connor, I said, my throat tight, I think my mom has been paying to keep Dr. Garrison's license clean. He pulled out a chair and sat next to me, reading over my shoulder. Why would she do that? He asked quietly. I don't know, I said, but I'm going to find out. I decided to start with the one person in my family who still had some concept of boundaries. My dad. We met at his office, not at home. It was a small, cluttered space above a strip mall physical therapy clinic, the kind of place where the carpet never quite recovered from the 80s. He looked older than his 62 years, shoulders rounded, hair thinner, eyes tired. Estelle, he said, standing to hug me, how's the baby? Active, I said. She likes to kick my bladder during meetings. He smiled faintly, then sobered. Your mother's been upset. That's one word for it, I said. I didn't sit. I couldn't. My nerves were buzzing too hard. Dad, I need you to be honest with me, I said. What's going on between Mom and Dr. Garrison? His eyes flickered, a small betrayal of panic. Estelle, I know about his suspensions, I cut in. I know about the donations. I know the amounts match those big withdrawals from your savings. I know Mom spends hours in his office even though she's not officially his patient. He sank back into his chair like his bones had given out. Some things, he said slowly, are better left in the past. Not when she's trying to force him on me and my baby, I said, my voice shaking. Not when she's harassing my doctor and showing up at my appointments. Not when she's acting like she and this man share some sacred secret none of us are allowed to question. He rubbed his hand over his face. Your mother, he began, then stopped. She had complications when she was young, before you were born. Dr. Garrison helped her through a difficult situation. What kind of situation? I asked. I can't say more, he murmured. I promised her. Dad, she's losing it, I said. She shoved Helen at my baby shower. She's scaring people in the waiting room at Lakeside. This has to stop. I'll talk to her, he said. But talking didn't help. If anything, it poured gasoline on whatever fire was already burning inside her. 2 weeks before my due date, I was home alone, waddling around the living room, trying to convince my ankles they still had a reason to exist, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Connor was at work. Helen had texted earlier to say she'd drop off a casserole tomorrow. When I opened the door, a man in a button-down shirt and neutral expression stood on the porch, holding a stack of papers. Estelle Kingsman? He asked. Yes, I said slowly. You're being served, he replied, handing me the documents. I stared at them, my brain taking a solid 10 seconds to process the words at the top. Petition for grandparent visitation rights. Declaration of parental incompetence. Filed by Diane Kingsman. The room tilted. I grabbed the doorframe, fingers digging into the wood. By the time Connor got home, he found me on the couch, papers spread out around me like debris after a storm, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. She's suing us, I choked out. She says we're making dangerous medical decisions. She wants partial custody of a baby that isn't even born yet. Connor's jaw clenched. He gathered the papers, flipped through them, and exhaled slowly through his nose. She can't do this, I said. She can't take our baby. She's not going to, he said firmly. Then he pulled out his phone and called a friend from college who'd gone into family law. The lawyer's response was both a relief and a blow. This is harassment, he said over speaker, especially before the child is born. But you do need to respond. The good news is, grandparent rights are hard to get in this state without proof of extreme circumstances. We filed our written response and, on our attorney's advice, a request for a restraining order. A hearing date was set for 2 weeks after my due date. I thought that would be the worst of it. I was wrong. 3 days before I was supposed to be induced, I woke up to a sharp, twisting pain low in my abdomen. At first, I thought it was just another Braxton Hicks contraction. I'd been having those for weeks. My uterus apparently enthusiastic about rehearsals. Then the next one hit. Connor, I gasped, grabbing his arm. I think it's time. The drive to Lakeside General felt both endless and instantaneous, a blur of red lights and shallow breathing. The nurses settled me into a delivery room, the monitors beeping becoming the soundtrack to the most intense experience of my life. 5 hours in, I was exhausted, sweaty, and clinging to Connor's hand like it was the only thing tethering me to earth. Dr. Brooks was calm, efficient, and kind, explaining every step as we went. "You're doing great, Estelle," she said. "Baby's heart rate looks good. We're getting there." And then the door slammed open. "What is she doing in here?" My mother's voice cut through the air like a siren. "Get out of my way." I twisted on the bed, a contraction ripping through me, my vision blurred with pain and disbelief. "Mom," I gasped, "what are you doing here?" Diane stood in the doorway, hair perfectly sprayed, lipstick flawless, eyes wild. Behind her, Dr. Garrison loomed, a white coat thrown over his arm as if he intended to put it on and simply take over. "This is exactly why you should have listened to me," my mother snapped, striding toward the bed. "You're in danger here. Your baby is in danger." "Ma'am, you can't be in here," one of the nurses said, stepping between us. "Only approved support persons are allowed." "I am her mother," Diane hissed. "And this," she gestured at Dr. Brooks with something like disgust, "is a second-rate doctor in a second-rate hospital." Connor moved to block her path. "Diane, you need to leave," he said, voice tight. "Security has already been notified." Dr. Brooks kept her focus on the monitors, but her jaw tightened. "Estelle, we're going to keep going," she said to me. "Try to breathe through this contraction. We're okay." My mother lunged forward anyway, shoving past the nurse. "Get away from my daughter," she shouted, reaching for me. Her hands connected with my shoulders. For one suspended second, everything slowed. I saw the shock on the nurse's face. I saw Connor's mouth forming my name. I tasted metal at the back of my throat. Then the world tilted. The side rail of the bed scraped painfully along my arm as my body slipped off the edge. I hit the floor hard, white-hot pain exploding through my hip and shoulder. The monitor's beeping went chaotic. "Code!" someone screamed. "She's in active labor. Get her back on the bed." Voices blurred together. Hands were on me, lifting, supporting, moving. Somewhere distantly, I heard my own groan of pain. Over the noise, a sentence cut like a knife. "Diane, you promised this wouldn't happen again." Dr. Garrison snapped. Again. The word lodged in my mind like a shard of glass. Security tackled my mother and Dr. Garrison toward the door while nurses swarmed around me. Dr. Brooks's calm voice turned urgent. "We need to get her to surgery," she said. "Baby's heart rate is dropping. She's bleeding. Prep for an emergency C-section now." Connor leaned over me, his face pale. "You're going to be okay," he said, gripping my hand so tightly it hurt. "Both of you. I'm right here, Estelle. I'm not going anywhere." The fluorescent lights blurred into streaks as they rushed me down the hallway. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia swallowed me was my mother's voice echoing in my head, twisted and wrong. "When something goes wrong, don't come crying to me." Then there was nothing but darkness and the faint echo of one word that wouldn't let go. Again, when I woke up, everything was too bright. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling swam above me, a rectangle of harsh fluorescent light. The air smelled like antiseptic and warm plastic. My throat felt raw, intubated, I realized. My stomach felt tight, heavy, bandaged. Then I heard a sound, a tiny soft cry. Not loud, not distressed, just alive. Connor's face came into view, eyes red-rimmed, hair a mess, the look of a man who had forgotten how to breathe until this very moment. "She's okay," he whispered, voice shaking. "Estelle, our daughter, she's here. She's perfect." My whole body sagged in relief. Tears pooled in my eyes, blurring everything. What happened?" I whispered. "You lost a lot of blood after the fall," he said. "They had to move fast. Emergency C-section. But Dr. Brooks, God, Estelle, she saved both of you." "Where is she?" I asked instinctively. "In the nursery with Helen," he said. "You'll see her soon, I promise." A soft knock sounded at the door before I could respond. A woman stepped in, dark hair pulled back, badge glinting at her belt. "Mrs. Kingsman?" she asked gently. It still startled me. We weren't married. Connor must have listed himself as father and partner, and me as Kingsman out of panic. But I nodded. I'm Detective Alvarez, she said. I need to ask you a few questions about what happened in the delivery room. Connor stiffened beside me. Can this wait? He asked. She just woke up from surgery. I understand, the detective said. But there are urgent legal concerns. Your daughter is safe, but what your mother did constitutes assault, and likely aggravated assault under state law. Assault. Hearing the word aloud felt surreal. I was too tired to be shocked, too hollowed out to be angry. Everything inside me felt suspended, waiting. Detective Alvarez pulled up a chair. The hospital's security footage confirms that your mother forced her way into the room and pushed you off the bed, she said. We also have witnesses. She and Dr. Nathaniel Garrison were detained on site. My breath caught. Is she in jail? For now, the detective said carefully, but that's not the only reason I'm here. She opened a folder and slid a document toward me. During the search of Dr. Garrison's belongings, we discovered files, photographs, and medical records that suggest long-term criminal activity. Your mother's name appeared repeatedly. Connor's fingers tightened around mine. What kind of activity? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. Detective Alvarez hesitated in a way that told me she wasn't sure how to say what came next. Mrs. Kingsman, Estelle, were you aware that your mother had a child before you were born? The world stilled. My first coherent thought was stupid and irrational. No, that can't be right. I would have known. What? I whispered. 28 years ago, she said, your mother gave birth to a son. Dr. Garrison was the attending physician. According to the official hospital record, the baby died several hours after delivery. My heartbeat thudded painfully. But, Detective Alvarez continued, there is no death certificate, no burial records, nothing to confirm the infant actually died. The air left my lungs in a slow, shaking exhale. I don't understand, I said. My mother never said anything. That's not unusual, the detective said softly. In cases like this, shame and trauma often keep families silent. Cases like what? Connor pressed. Illegal adoptions, Detective Alvarez said. Black market adoptions were more common in this region decades ago. A small network of doctors and intermediaries would take advantage of young, vulnerable mothers. They would claim the baby died, then sell the infant to wealthy families, often out of state. My stomach twisted hard, nothing to do with surgery pain. You're saying, I whispered, that my mother's baby didn't die. He was sold? We are investigating that possibility, the detective said. And Dr. Garrison is connected to multiple cases. Your mother may have been a victim first, but later, she swallowed. Later, she appears to have participated in covering up his crimes. My chest clenched, my vision pulsed. No, I said, no, she wouldn't. But my own voice betrayed me. Because hadn't she already shoved me in a hospital room in active labor just to force his involvement? Hadn't she paid to protect his license? Hadn't she spent hours in his private office alone? Detective Alvarez closed her folder. We'll need to interview your mother when she has legal representation. She's refusing to cooperate so far. I stared down at my trembling hands. Do you know the baby's name? I asked, barely audible. The one from before? Yes, she said gently. His birth certificate lists him as Baby Boy Kingsman. Is he alive? I whispered. Detective Alvarez hesitated. We have reason to believe so, she said. We're tracking adoption records and cross-referencing names with possible matches. I'll update you as soon as we confirm anything. After she left, the room felt too quiet. My breathing felt too loud. Connor squeezed my hand again, anchoring me. Estelle, he murmured, none of this is your fault. She lied to me, I whispered. My whole life. You didn't do anything wrong. She shoved me, I said, numb. While I was in labor, she could have killed our daughter. And she's going to face consequences. I leaned back against the pillows, chest aching. A knock sounded again. This time my father entered, shoulders slumped, eyes red. Dad, I breathed. He came to the side of my bed, his hands trembling as he reached for mine. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. You knew, I said, my voice breaking. You knew she had a baby before me. He closed his eyes. She told me when we first got married. She said he died. I believed her. I never questioned it. Then years later, things didn't add up. She acted strange during your birth. Scared, obsessive. I suspected something was wrong, but you said nothing, I finished, feeling the crack form across my chest. I loved her, he whispered. I thought I could protect her, and you. You didn't protect me, I said, or Grace. He flinched. I know, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. I didn't have the strength to tell him whether I forgave him. I didn't even know the answer myself. 2 days later, Detective Alvarez returned, with news. We found him, she said, your mother's first child. My breath caught. He was adopted by a family in Portland. He's alive. His name is Andrew. Andrew, a brother I never knew existed. He's agreed to meet you, she said. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. I wore loose clothing to hide the incision bandage beneath my shirt. Connor came with me, but sat at a distant table, giving us space. Andrew walked in, tall, gentle-eyed, with the same soft jawline my father used to have before life eroded him. Estelle? He asked. Yes, I whispered. We sat, we talked. It was awkward, tender, impossible. He told me he'd always suspected his adoption story was incomplete, that he'd dreamed of finding his birth family someday, that he'd wondered whether anyone had wanted him. And I told him the truth, that if my mother had known how to love, she would have wanted him fiercely. When we left, we agreed to stay in touch. He hugged me lightly, careful of my surgery. You deserve better, he said softly. So did you, I replied. As I watched him walk away, I realized the truth. My mother's secrets didn't just break our family. They created new pieces, pieces we never knew were missing, pieces we might still learn how to put together. The trial didn't just tear open old wounds, it created new ones. By the time Dr. Garrison and my mother were formally charged, reporters were already circling like vultures. The headlines were brutal. Local OB-GYN linked to illegal adoption ring. Mother and doctor accused of hospital room assault. Family secret sparks. Federal investigation. Everywhere I went, grocery store lines, gas pumps, even walking Grace's stroller, someone recognized me. Some offered condolences. Some whispered. Some just stared. Connor became my shield, always stepping between me and flashing phones, always guiding me gently toward the car before I could crumble. Brandon didn't handle it as well. Our whole family is a lie, he told me one night, pacing our living room. Everything Mom preached about honesty, family values, she was doing the exact opposite behind our backs. She was working with that monster. He broke off, shaking. I put a hand on his arm. She was a victim first, I said softly. He stared at me with hollow eyes. Was she? Or did she become something worse than him? I didn't have an answer. We didn't see my mother until the arraignment. She entered the courtroom in handcuffs, wearing a county-issued jumpsuit, but somehow still carried herself like nothing applied to her. When the judge read the charges, aggravated assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, aiding and abetting illegal adoptions, she didn't flinch. She didn't look at me. Not once. Dr. Garrison was led in next. He was older than I remembered, his posture less steady, but his eyes, those were the same, cold, calculating. Above consequences. When the prosecutor listed the federal charges he faced, racketeering, fraud, human trafficking, he looked bored, as if he thought this inconvenience would pass. But what cracked me open wasn't seeing him. It was hearing him. During a brief recess, he turned to my mother and whispered loudly enough for the courtroom microphones to catch. You promised your daughter would never dig into the past. My mother stiffened, her eyes darting toward where I sat. I felt Connor's grip on my knee tighten, steadying me. I wasn't going to break, not in front of them. The trial lasted months. I testified about the shove in the delivery room, about the harassment, about the fear, about the moment her hands hit my shoulders and I realized she hadn't come to protect me. She'd come to control me, no matter the cost. Dr. Brooks testified next, relaying the medical chaos that followed the fall, the emergency C-section, the threat to both me and Grace. Helen testified too, describing the baby shower, the way my mother burst into her home with Dr. Garrison in tow. Even my father testified, voice shaking as he admitted he'd known for decades that something was wrong, that he'd suspected but never confronted. And then it was my mother's turn. She walked to the stand as if she were entering a stage, chin lifted, spine straight, an actress ready for her monologue. I just wanted what was best for my daughter, she said, her voice steady. I knew Dr. Garrison understood her medical history. I knew he could protect her. The prosecutor leaned forward. Did you think pushing a woman in active labor off a hospital bed was protecting her? My daughter was in danger, she insisted. She was too stubborn to see it. What about forging records for Dr. Garrison, paying bribes, recruiting other young women to him? Her jaw tightened. I was helping women who needed guidance. He found homes for babies who otherwise would have been raised by their mothers, the prosecutor snapped. Mothers he manipulated and lied to, including you. My mother's hands clenched. You don't understand, she said sharply. He saved me. No, I whispered under my breath. He destroyed you. Maybe she heard it. Maybe she didn't. But her expression hardened, cold, unyielding, unreachable. She wasn't ready to face the truth. Not then, maybe not ever. The sentencing hearing was quiet compared to the trial. The judge spoke slowly, gravely. "Dr. Nathaniel Garrison," he said, "you exploited vulnerable young women for decades. You coerced them, lied to them, profited from their trauma. You showed no remorse. Therefore, I am sentencing you to 25 years to life in federal prison." Dr. Garrison didn't react. Then came my mother. "Diane Kingsman," the judge said, "your story is more complicated. You were a victim at 17, but as an adult, you chose to continue facilitating Dr. Garrison's crimes. You assaulted your pregnant daughter. You endangered her unborn child. For that, this court sentences you to 5 years in state prison, with potential parole after 3. My mother finally looked at me. Her eyes weren't angry. They were pleading. "I just wanted to protect you," she said. I shook my head. "No, Mom," I whispered. "You wanted control. You wanted to rewrite your trauma by rewriting my life, but I'm not your second chance." Her mouth trembled. Then the bailiff led her away. Life after the trial wasn't simple, or neat, or instantly healed, but it slowly became ours again. Connor's parents practically adopted me and Brandon while our own family imploded. Helen brought casseroles, offered babysitting, and cried when she held Grace's tiny hands. My father filed for divorce while my mother was in prison. He couldn't forgive the lies, or what she'd done to me. A year later, he met Patricia, a gentle, soft-spoken librarian with warm eyes and no desire to control anyone. They married the following spring. At their wedding, he hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for letting me be part of Grace's life." He moved closer to us, became the kind of grandfather I never thought Grace would have. We won a civil settlement from the hospital where Dr. Garrison had practiced, and we put most of it into a college fund for Grace. The rest went to a nonprofit that reunites illegal adoption victims with their birth families. Because that was part of our story now, too. I met with Andrew a few more times, coffee shops, quiet lunches, messages back and forth about our complicated parents. He had a good life with his adoptive family. He wasn't angry, not at me anyway. If anything, he was grateful that the truth had finally come out. He told me once, "I'm glad you found out before he hurt anyone else." I still don't know if he meant Dr. Garrison or our mother. Grace turned 2 last month. She has Connor's dimples and my stubborn streak, though he insists the stubbornness is entirely mine. She's fearless, silly, obsessed with choosing her own outfits, which means most days she looks like a confetti cannon exploded in her dresser. She is loved. She is safe. She is free. And every time I watch her toddle around the park in mismatched socks and proud confidence, I feel something I didn't have when I was her age. Air, space, choice. My mother writes from prison sometimes. Her letters are filled with explanations, excuses, justifications, not apologies. I read one, just one. Then I stopped opening them. Brandon visited her once. He came back hollow. "She's not sorry," he said. "She still thinks she saved you. She still thinks he was a good man. Maybe she's too broken to ever heal. Maybe she never learned how. But that's no longer my responsibility." Diane gets out on parole next month. She isn't allowed to contact me or Grace. She's planning to move back to town, according to Brandon. Part of me wonders whether she's learned anything, whether prison gave her even a sliver of clarity. Another part of me knows that some people never come back from the darkness they let grow inside them. Connor and I have started talking about having another baby. This time, there will be no courtrooms, no lawsuits, no doctors barging into delivery rooms, no hands shoving me off a bed. This time it will be ours from the start. Safe, calm, ours. Last night, as I rocked Grace in the dim light of her room, I thought about something I heard once. Victims don't always stay victims. Sometimes they become the thing that once hurt them. Sometimes they never learn to break the cycle. Sometimes they demand others live out the life they lost. I am breaking that cycle. Grace will grow up knowing she is loved without condition. She will never have to barter for affection, never have to fear losing it, never have to choose between obedience and safety. She will grow up free, and so will I. Because when the moment came, when my mother's hands pushed me off that hospital bed, shattering every illusion I still had about her, I finally understood. Some boundaries once crossed are permanent. Some trust, once broken, is irreparable. Some ties once cut are a mercy. I chose Grace. I chose myself. I chose freedom over obligation. And I have never looked back.